So you have to think about that. The final part I'll mention from Imam Al-Jawzi rahimahullah in his tafsir is where he mentions, and this particular ayah will end on this point, and we'll take this home inshallah. He states, quote, and so the ayah, do not intend on giving the worst of what you have, something that you wouldn't even take. Don't look to get rid of the worst of what you have in the hope that someone else will take it and that you'll have nothing to do with it. So you close your eyes and take the worst of your wealth, what you yourself would never take, and you give it away. You should know that Allah is free of all wants, and that means that when He orders you to give sadaqah, He's informed you of this, but it's not because He needs it. He is praiseworthy over all that. Great and exalted is He above all that. He's free of that, but rather He's told you to do this because it's a command from Him, and to sustain those who need it, the women, the children, and those who are weak. Shaitan threatens you with poverty, meaning that he tells you not to spend. Don't spend, don't give the sadaqah. It will decrease your wealth. Don't give it. So he tells you that you will be poor if you give it. And he tells you to commit perversions. And perversion and indecency is miserliness. But secondly, it's all forms of disobedience. And this is why Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he says, and Allah, He tells you of the forgiveness for your perversions, and also that He will increase you in your wealth. He gives wisdom to who He wills, meaning that this wisdom is, number one, is the Quran. And secondly, it's knowing what's abrogated and what abrogates, the verses that are decisive, the allegorical, the verses that give precedence, the verses that are taking precedence over. Prophethood, understanding the Quran, knowledge and fiqh, understanding speech when it's been given, taqwa in the deen of Allah, fear of Allah, understanding the deen and how to act by it, knowing the deen and acting by it. Someone can never be called wise until he has knowledge of the deen and acts according to the knowledge that he has. So when Allah says whoever's been given wisdom, meaning whoever Allah has given wisdom, has been given much indeed. And no one remembers this, no one can reflect on this except those who have been given knowledge. Meaning no one can fully understand the Quran and the book of Allah except those who've been given a sound intellect by Allah, and it is His blessing. Close quote. أقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم أستغفر الله إن الله غفور رحيم يرحم الراحمين. Now, the ayah that we reached today was ayah 269 of Surat Al-Baqarah. Now, what's significant about this is he mentions the wisdom. This ayah about whoever has been given wisdom by Allah is usually the ulama say that this is referring to the one who's been given knowledge of fiqh and knowledge of the deen. It's one of the ayat of the ulama, one of the verses that mentions the ulama, that there's a specific clerical class of people that have been set aside. Right? Surah At-Tawbah, the 9th surah, 122. Surah An-Nisa, the 4th surah, 59. This ayah 269, Surah Al-Baqarah, is one of the ayat al-ulama. It's one of the ayat where the clerical class of people set aside for this ummah. That particular set of people are mentioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those are the people that it's their job. They spend their waking days and nights studying this faith, showing themselves approved, preaching the faith, guiding the people, explaining to the people the truth of the matter, and perfecting the people and changing the states of evil people into good people and bettering good people into excellent people. It's those people that are in charge. Now, I've gone on for a little while. We reached from ayah 257 to ayah 269. Walhamdulillah. So, inshallah, I may have missed something along the way. Is there a question over what we've covered so far today? A question of what we've covered so far today? No? Okay. Yes?
Just a question on sort of the issue with regard to reading the Quran in the state of wudu, and also for during the monthly, if somebody can read the Musaf translation rather than the Musaf, or just a pure translation.
Okay.
And also about giving the Quran as has been done many times on television to people who are mushriks, and so therefore najis. So should they be given one that's just a purely translation, or one with the Arabic Musaf there as well?
The question is regarding someone. The question is actually twofold. One is someone reading the Quran and other than a state of purity, whether it's without wudu or whether someone is having their monthly cycle. And then number two, about giving a copy of, giving the Mus'haf to an idol worshipper. Okay, giving the Mus'haf to an idol worshipper. Giving the Mus'haf to an idol worshipper. Alhamdulillah, salatu wa rasulillah. When, yarhamukallah, it's the understanding of Muslim orthodoxy that someone should not touch the Quran without wudu, and that someone is not to do so. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned this in the Quran. No one touches it except the purified. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a hadith in the Muwatta mentions about that ayah that no one should touch it who's not in a state of purity. Now, if you're talking about, there are miscellaneous issues connected to it. If someone has a mushaf in their bag and they break their wudu, it's still permitted for them to carry it. Or if it's inside of a thick leather case, it is still permitted for them to carry it, according to the qawl of at least one set of ulama. It's still permitted for them to carry it. Now the issue comes about reading the Quran if one is in their monthly cycle. If someone is in their monthly cycle and they are reviewing or going over notes, they can listen to recitation of the Quran and they can look at the page, but they cannot touch it barehanded. They can review what they already know. They can recite any du'as with Quran in it, but they cannot touch it barehanded. Now some of our ulama, Imam Taqiyuddin Al-Futuhi, rahimahullah, the great Egyptian, he said that it is permitted if they're using gloves or there's some sort of barrier that they can read from it, but that they don't recite from it to memorize. They read from it to review. They already know Surat Al-Kahf. They're reading to review, but they don't read to do hifz. Why? Because the ulama are referring back to a statement in Sahih al-Jami', where Aisha radiallahu anha mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sometimes he would be reclining and he would lay on her when he did not have wudu, and he would recite the Quran when he was not in a state of wudu, but in no other time. Now that fatwa from her precludes the possibility of his reciting it when he's in a state of junub. And that is also confirmed by Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, that someone should not even recite a letter of the Quran if they're in a state of junub or their monthly cycle. Not even a letter. Now this has to do with memorizing and other things like that. Du'as is different. We're talking about memorizing. So the ruling on that is you have to be careful. Now in terms of carrying, and as I said, holding it with gloves on and reading from it, I only know that position to be from the Hanbali scholars. I don't know of any other fuqaha who hold that position. I don't know the answer to any other question on that. As far as idol worshippers being given the mushaf, this is haram. They must not be given the mushaf. Those are mushriks. Those are pagans. Those are the worst of creation. They should be given a translation in their own language. Because the mushaf, the bearing of it and the quality of it and the value of it is not fully understood by them. You're talking to a people, especially Americans, who have grown up seeing the Gideon's Bible, copies of the Bible in the bathroom on top of the commode. They don't understand that speech of Allah means speech of Allah. It's the same thing to them in USA Today newspaper. They don't understand the value of it. So what someone should do is, if they say, well, I want a copy, or I want to read the Quran for myself, give them a translation, a full translation in their own language, and hand that to them. The people that have been giving the mushaf, just as much as the people that will sometimes sell Islamic clothes to the unbelievers, this is not halal. They should not be doing this, because those things belong to the believers and are their exclusive rights and are clear designation between the believers and the unbelievers. They should not be giving those things to them. It's not halal for them to do that. According to any school, they shouldn't be giving that to them, because it's not their right. And they won't know what to do with it, because they don't have wudu, they won't know to clean up. Now, a common objection, because the only cult that I know that would allow this, because even Ahmadis don't, is Salafiyah. Some among their ranks will say, well, this is different, because what about the statement where Umar radiallahu anhu, he looked at Surah Taha and he touched the Quran there, he didn't have wudu? The answer to these heathens is based in something very simple. That was not the entire Quran. That was a section of a surah. Now, that's a totally different matter. Ulama can dispute about that, but that's nothing to do with touching the mushaf. That is a section of a surah, Surah Taha. So that's not even a valid argument. Any more than those criminals, those insane criminals who said that when Allah said La yamassuhu illa mutahharun, that no one should touch it except for the purified, that it's referring to the angels. That's got nothing to do with the actual hukm shari of the matter. And this is it's for reasons like this that you see why our ulama have said in general that Salafis in general are kuffar, because there's this attitude of rebellion against Allah and hatred of what Allah revealed in His book and His Sunnah. So there is no textual, reliable position on holding the mushaf barehanded like a heathen and giving it to other heathens. There's no proof for that. And the people that reject that or deny that have a sickness in their hearts, and no one can remove it except Allah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Is there a final question? Yes, brother.
Okay, regarding the first time you said that Jerusalem was destroyed, and you're referring to a certain topic in history. I mean, is there a special book? Is there a specific book that you could recommend to read regarding this?
The question is regarding the destruction of Jerusalem and the exile, the Jewish exile period. And is there a specific book that one would read? Alhamdulillah. I would say that if you can go to your local library and say to them, I am interested in studying the Jewish exile of the 6th century BC. Any literature to do with that topic, you will find a huge amount of literature. I would say to start small and go big. If you go big, you're just going to have problems. You're going to just have total frustration. There's going to be too much literature. You're not going to be able to follow it all. There's a good book called The History of the Jews by Chaim Potok. C-H-A-I-M, Potok, P-O-T-O-K. Chaim Potok. The History of the Jews. There's another book he wrote called The Wandering Jew, which gives the whole breakdown of Jews historically, all the lands they've been kicked out of and exiled from, and all the other things. It's a tremendous book, because as a Jewish author, he has a huge amount of wisdom. Another book I would say for you to take a look at would be Jacob Neusner, which is Neusner. Any books by him, he is a very competent scholar. Any books by him will cover the exile period, especially there's another book called The Jewish Temple Period. And I think there's a selection of Jewish authors. The Jewish Temple Period. There's a whole set of them. If you go to Encyclopedia Judaica, under the First Temple, or Temple Judaism, there is a huge article. If you copied that on a copy machine, you probably have about 30 pages just to get a good overview of the Temple period, what happened, how the religion. I mean, it wasn't until the end of that period, in the beginning of Second Temple period, that the word Judaism, Yehudiyot, was founded. Well, prior to then, what religion were they? What was it called before that? It's just hard hitting, that stuff, hard hitting. All right. So inshallah, I hope that's of some use. If there is no further question, we will close from here. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم واستغفر الله إن الله غفور رحيم يرحم الراحمين لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك واشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك إنه غفور رحيم يرحم الراحمين السلام عليكم.